For our final episode in the series, we have some more stories of the paranormal. This time from social media site Reddit, where a user posed this question. A man once said, if you want a good story, just ask any random person if there is ever an event in their life they cannot explain. Someone almost always has one weird thing that happened to them. So, Reddit, regardless of whatever you believe about the world, what's your story? Are you ready for some creepy stories? Let's get weird. This first one is from a user going by the name of Saxy French Horn, because it's an anonymous site, you see. This one had a couple of edits adding info that I've incorporated into the story. Here we go. I was sitting in my room reading a book facing my open door when I saw my brother walk past into his bedroom next to mine. I heard him close the door. 30 seconds later, my dad comes up to my room ashen-faced. "Where's your brother?" he asks me. "In his room," I answer without hesitation. "No, he's not." My dad continues to look absolutely horrified. "Your brother's not home." My brother was out with his friends. We check his room. It's empty. It was a second story with a straight drop down and hard to open window, so there's no chance of a prank or window exit. We both saw the same whatever it was walk into my brother's room. My dad got a better look at the thing than I did. He asked where my brother was, so I would have to independently confirm that I'd seen someone, that the someone looked like my brother, and that it had entered my brother's room. My brother didn't come home for several hours. Still gives me goosebumps. We didn't tell my brother until we moved to a new house. Nice. I do love a doppelganger story. Those and mimics. Terrifying. How would you react to that one? And now, for something completely different. Story number 2. The user is Clemit. Their post is actually a story told to them by their dad. He said, "When I was young, probably 12 or 13, my family lived in a small residential suburb. There was a street lamp right across the street from us that would shine into our living room window at night, so every night before we went to bed, my father would draw the curtains. One night I woke up around 2 a.m. and went to the kitchen to get some water. As I passed through the living room, I noticed a beam of light from the street lamp had made it through a small gap between the curtains, and I had the urge to peek through. Standing under the street lamp was a tall man with a black cap, silver skin and massive eyes. Those huge bug eyes that you see in alien movies. He was standing there motionless, staring right at me. I quickly ducked down behind my father's recliner. There was no way he could have seen me. The house was completely dark and I barely moved the curtains as I looked through. After a few minutes of sitting on the floor behind the recliner, I grew curious to see if the man had passed. I looked through the curtains again. Pressed firmly against the other side of the glass, inches away from my face, was the silver man with bug eyes staring right at me. After a moment frozen in terror, I ran through the house towards my father's room and woke him up, quickly telling him what happened. He grabbed his shotgun and went outside to look around. He didn't find anyone, but there was a set of fresh footprints in the dew that had been collecting on the lawn. Nope. I wonder what prompted them to look outside. You do hear that a lot in spooky stories. I don't know why, but I had the urge to. Sometimes it's bad, sometimes it saves you. Anyway, good one. Next. User MKRebs119 said, I was homesick sometime during high school, 11th or 12th grade. I was sitting in my computer chair playing Skyrim when my dog, who was usually content by himself and never one for affection, came into my room and lay down, staring out my door. Being alone and this not being his normal course of action unnerved me a bit, so I closed my door and went back to playing. Not 3 minutes later, I hear the voice of my mother calling my name, clear as day. She's a school teacher, so she would have been at work. I tried to be as quiet as possible and lower my TV all the way down to make sure I didn't attract whatever I heard, and I could hear more clearly. only to hear the bedroom door upstairs slam shut. I sat in my room all day long in silence until my mum came home. I asked her if she was home earlier and she denied it. One of the scariest moments of my life. There we go, a mimic. Scarier than a doppelganger, I think, because there's usually that thing where they want you to take some sort of action, like they're laying a trap for you. What happens if you do what they ask? I don't know, I don't want to know. Great story though. Next. User Speedy_fish wrote, I was measuring ingredients for a cake in my apartment when I dropped my blue plastic measuring cup. I heard it hit the ground once and then no other sound afterwards. I immediately looked all around for it, but it had vanished. By the end of my search, I had removed the drawers, moved the appliances, and checked inside, under, behind everything in the kitchen and surrounding areas. I've moved 3 times since then and never found it. A little bit of a lighter one there, but still really strange. I have heard of this before, actually. I experienced something similar, or the reverse of this. That's True Ghost Stories, episode 4, kids. That'll be in the link in the show notes. But yeah, it's like you drop something into another dimension, like a glitch in the Matrix. Sometimes they reappear in a totally different place. Have you got a glitch in the Matrix story? Let me know. Let's move on. User ADSQ93 posted this. Both mine and my brother's room were in the same hallway. One night, I went to the bathroom and saw something pass by really quickly, like it was headed towards my room. It was something with a white, long shirt and black hair, but it was really blurry. It passed by really quickly. I went to check, thinking it was my brother, and saw nothing. Weeks later, my brother was going to his room, and I heard him calling me out loud. He said, "Bro, you here?" I was at the table watching videos on YouTube. I tell him, "I'm over here, why are you looking into my room?" The moment I tell him that, his face goes pale and he slams the door. He started freaking out, so I asked him what happened. He tells me that when he was entering his room, he saw something pass by him going the other way towards my room. He thought it was me, so he went to check. I asked him what he saw, and he tells me, "You're not going to believe me, but I saw something white pass by." I asked him if it had black hair. He said yes. Ooh. Did anyone else get the image of the girl from The Ring? No? Are you thinking about the girl from The Ring now? Good. Don't think about the girl from The Ring. Next. This next one is scary for very different reasons. It's from a user calling themselves Spider Inside. I'm an ER doctor currently. When I was in med school, we had a chronic respiratory failure patient who was do not resuscitate. During our morning rounds, the nurse called us bedside for a vital sign check. The guy was deader than a block of wood. No pulse, no breathing, pupils fixed and dilated, etc. My senior resident was like, "Well, this is a great chance for you to confirm your first dead body." We write up his death note, make arrangements, whatever. An hour later, we get called by the same nurse. This guy is alive and talking to me. Sure enough, he is wide awake and he's chatting. He got discharged a few days later. I kept tabs on him until I finished med school. He lived at least another 1.5 years. Ugh. I think the scariest part of this is not the guy coming back from the dead, but the fact that 3 medical professionals were sure that he was dead, and then he wasn't. If you've got that phobia of being buried alive, I'm sure you enjoyed that one. Hopefully you're still not thinking about the girl from The Ring though. This next one is trippy. Literally. It's from user Natalfrost, and it goes something like this. When I was 21, a bunch of my friends and I did magic mushrooms together. While we were tripping, I had a very vivid hallucination. I was on a rocking chair, sitting opposite 3 of my friends. As I rocked back, I saw them as if they were in their late 50s. Grey hair, wrinkly. When I rocked forward, I'd see them normal and young in that moment again. I realised after a few times back and forth that I wasn't seeing the third guy when I rocked back, meaning to say I didn't see the old version of him. I went on for about half an hour from various positions in the chair and I just couldn't wrap my head around it. It really weirded me out. Being weirded out on a mushroom trip isn't exactly a great feeling, so I obviously got a bit hysterical and passed out. I vaguely told the guys about it the next day, and quite obviously we all laughed it off. 8 months later, the friend I didn't see in the back and forth vision died in a motorcycle accident. That's heavy. Something about this one and hallucinogenics. It's something I've never done myself. I struggle enough with this reality. Ho ho. But I have had plenty of stories that lead me to thinking that maybe what you see isn't imaginary, but another reality. Taking these stories at face value, reading these thinking they're fake is no kind of fun and pointless. So what are we all doing here? But I think he's telling the truth. And if he is, what could be going on here? Food for thought. And this next one is as weird as it is spooky. This is from Queen of Meme. For 3 days, I remember this odd blurry feeling of not being myself. I made a post about it on social media and how it felt as if I was disconnected. I normally have dissociative feelings, but this was a whole other level. I felt as if someone took over me, but I didn't analyse it. I basically just excused it as normal when being depressed or something. I lived together with my boyfriend and he was hanging out with me during this episode. I told him for fun, haha, I felt like I wasn't myself these last 3 days. And he goes, you weren't. When I asked him what he meant, he said, you were someone else, someone I recognised. You moved like her, you talked like her, you said things to me only she and I know. You even looked at me with a very special look and I knew who you were. You weren't you. I asked who I was and he said Sophia. Sophia was his ex. His ex killed herself several years ago. Something like an out-of-body experience there. When someone isn't feeling or acting themselves, imagine it could be something like this. Moving on. User CocoPelly687 said, when I was growing up, my dad and I would sit for hours and watch dragonflies. He and my mum divorced when I was 13, and he moved out of state and couldn't really support himself and a kid, so my mum got custody and moved us to a different state. The invitation was always open for him to visit, but he never did. But we'd talk on the phone a few times a week to stay caught up. He got a rare kind of cancer in his vocal cords and was going to have something surgically removed in there. He called me a few days after the surgery and told me things were looking good, but they were keeping him in the hospital because he had a fever after the surgery. I knew at that point that this was our last conversation. The next day, I was sitting in my truck before work with the window open, and a dragonfly landed on my hand. It was November, so there shouldn't have been any around, and it felt like my dad was standing there. About 2 minutes later, I got a call from his friend who was staying with him in the hospital that he had passed away. He died about 5 minutes before I'd seen the dragonfly. Well, that's a touching one there. Could it have been a coincidence? Sure, a pretty big one, but it's the synchronicity and that feeling his dad was standing there that makes it a bit harder to dismiss. The next story, the user later deleted their account, so I've got no username, but they opened their story by saying, this is a dark one. It happened when I was around 11. My parents and I went on a trip to Austria and we visited a theme park. In the theme park was a jumpy thing. There was a 1, 2 and 3 meter pole and you could jump down onto this huge cushion. I wanted to try it and went straight up the highest pole. I'd jumped down those poles a few times, But that time I was just terrified. I don't know why, but all of a sudden I was shaking and scared for my life. It was this deep kind of fear which I'd never felt before. My mind was telling me not to jump. It didn't make sense because I'd just jumped down there and it was fun. I let the kid behind me go first. She died. The cushion had a leak and she broke her neck. She was 9 years old. I climbed down and will never forget this. If I'd jumped, I would be dead, and I can't stop feeling like fate wanted me on that day and not her. Ugh, a nasty one that. You do hear stories where people have strange feelings not to do something and it saves their life. Listen to your gut. Let's move on. Just a quick note on this story from user Yukina Gato, just for clarity. The mention of beds in the story I think is more like a mattresses on the floor type deal, rather than what we would think of as beds, I think. Anyway, the story goes like this. My sister, 9 at the time, and I, 14 at the time, shared a room, with our beds next to each other. Normally, our beds were about 4 feet apart, but they ended up being directly next to each other one night, probably because at the time she was constantly doing gymnastics on her bed, which would push the mattress. That night, I dreamt of a glass doll with long, dark hair. I remember feeling like I needed to protect it. I tried my best to keep it safe, promising it would be okay, but as I said these words, the doll's hair began falling out. I dropped the doll and it shattered. With the help of doctors, the doll was glued back together and her hair grew back. When I woke up, I felt like crying. I didn't understand why I'd had that dream. I noticed my head had left my pillow at some point and was against my sister's head. When she finally woke up, she told me about her dream. It was the same. By this point I was totally freaked out, but she didn't believe me when I told her. She thought I was just messing with her. 6 months later, my sister was diagnosed with cancer. She ended up losing all her hair. Like the dream, her hair grew back and she got better. She doesn't remember this dream happening, and I'm still just confused about it all. In a way, I'm thankful for the dream, because I got to somewhat emotionally brace myself for what was to come. Weird premonition dreams. Do you think the dream was to help her prepare for what was to come? Interesting. This next one is mental. User Wolfle posted, when I was young, 6 to 8, not really sure, my parents had this apartment building they rented out near our house. One of the tenants was a couple. I used to play with the wife's younger brother and would hang out at their apartment to play. It was around the couple's son's birthday, and I think it was his first, because I remember they were making a big deal about it and talking about it for weeks. I asked my parents if I could go. I remember them indirectly saying no. I also remember clearly being bummed out about it for a few days. A few days after the party, I was hanging out at the apartment and they were gushing about the party pictures that had just got developed, film ones, and I was like, I wish I was there. Then the wife was like, what do you mean? You were there, look. Here you are. She showed me the pictures. I was there. I remember asking my aunt if I went, and even she said no, but my friend, the younger brother, told me I was there, and we even played. I just don't remember attending that party at all. That is a strange one. I did hear something similar on Jim Harold's Campfire podcast, where something like this happened to an adult. The friends at the party he did not remember attending said he was acting weird all night, but if my memory serves, he was photographed at another party he did remember going to, and it was miles away from the first, so he couldn't have possibly gone to both. Bonkers. Next. User NLBF Supreme dropped this one. A couple of years ago, my great uncle passed away. After the funeral, a group of close family and I went out to dinner with my great aunt. While we were eating, she got a phone call and she looked up extremely pale. answered, and then hung up. The call was from my great uncle. No one was on the other end of the phone, and his phone was at her house with no one home. Definitely freaked everyone at the table out. A short but cool story there, and again I've heard very similar on Jim Harrell's Campfire. It does happen. Now we go back to the glitchy Matrix with Baby Kitten 28. My mum came home from a cruise, and I went to greet her and carry her suitcase up into the hall. I'd been staying in her room the entire week watching Netflix. Heading back into her room after hugging her, I found a ring lying on the direct path into her room that absolutely hadn't been there a minute before. The inscription said, "I have always loved you." She was in the bathroom and hadn't even entered her room yet, and I had placed her suitcase in the hall. After checking with family and posting on Facebook, no one had ever seen the ring before, including my mum. It was rather creepy. For some reason, I started wearing the ring, and, months later, a clip-on earring, clearly from decades prior, appeared in a plant my mum was watering. She watered it every week and the earring just appeared out of nowhere. I took the ring off and stopped wearing it, and jewellery stopped appearing. So I think the moral of that story is, if magic jewellery appears out of nowhere, don't wear it! What are you doing? Strange one though, eh? Anyway, here's another one. This one is from Racing Penguin. My girlfriend had a black stone heart ring she'd wear when I met her, but it would occasionally somehow fall off, despite being a tight fit, only to be found in odd places days later. Eventually she tied it on a leather strap and gave it to me to wear around my neck. It was a very tight fit over my head as it was a bit short. It was an effort to get it on or off, but we joked that at least I wouldn't lose it. One day we were packing up from the family holiday home we'd sold 2 hours from home, and while loading furniture onto the trailer, I must have snapped the tight leather strap and lost it. We only realised halfway home. We searched the trailer as we unloaded, but no sign. We'd sold the holiday house, so no one we knew could even go and look for it. We finally accepted, this time, it was lost for good. 2 years later, my dad was mowing the lawn on the ride-on at home, and he went to our paddock to empty it. He got off and emptied the clippings, but when he got back onto the mower and reached for the gear stick, he felt something. The ring was sitting balanced on top of the gear stick, the leather string wound down around the gear lever, but still intact, not snapped. He was alone in the middle of the paddock. We have no idea how it got there, 2 years later, 150 kilometres from where it was lost. I asked my now wife where it came from originally. She found it in a kooky little pop-up shop of witchy type things. It was the only ring there, and apparently it was also the only second-hand item they had for sale. The kicker here, I put it in my wooden box of special items so we'd never lose it again. I went to get it to show someone a few years ago. It wasn't there anymore.
For more spooky strangeness, visit www.markwshako.com. And now, back to the episode.
Spooky ring from a witchy shop. Love that. How did it reappear so far away, and with the strap intact? Crazy. That is almost all from me. Hope you've enjoyed this one as much as I have. Have you experienced anything like the stories from today? Is there an event in your life that you cannot explain? Please drop your spooky experience in the comments. If you would like to share a story but remain anonymous, email me at marc@markwshako.com with the subject line Ghost Story. That email once again, marc@markwshako.com. That's MARC, folks. Now, just before we go, there's time for one more story. We're staying on the theme of jewellery. This one comes from Ginger Chain Smoker. I have a ring. One of those cheap thumb rings that were so cool in 2000. One day I lost it. Normal, I bought it when I was 12. Those things get lost. A few days later, at school, I found it on the floor. Okay, cool. They don't clean here. No big deal. Then, I lost it again. Fine. High schoolers lose stuff. I find it again. And on and on. Now things start to get weird. I lose that ring again in the summer before I start uni. First week of lessons, I find it under my desk. At university. Then, and this is really weird, while I'm moving into my first flat, it falls, rolls on the floor, and drops into the elevator shaft. 3 witnesses. Adios forever. Only, no. I find it again. In the lunchroom, at work, under the table. It's in a hospital, so now I know for certain that it gets cleaned. I called the 3 witnesses to confirm I wasn't going crazy. I'm 29 now. I use that ring as a keychain. Last time I lost it was a few months ago, and while my flatmate was getting hysterical over me losing my keys, I kept going, "Don't worry, they'll turn up." I found the ring. It was in the fruit bowl. No keys. That's all from me. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep it weird. That was a clip from Marc W. Shako's Weird World podcast. That music you can hear now is Lone Wolf by Guillaume Bernard. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe to get more weirdness in your life. If you want to listen to the podcast free, head over to my website markwshako.com for more info, and follow me on Facebook and X.